My sister knocked up my husband, and Mom helped them hide it. 6 months later, they want me to raise the kid and pay my sister's legal bills. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Sup, Reddit. Never thought I'd be posting here, but I need to get this off my chest. Got completely blindsided by the 3 people who were supposed to have my back: my husband, my sister, and my own mother. Here's how it all went down. I, 28 female, have been working as a software engineer for the last 5 years. Started at a small tech startup and worked my way up to senior developer. We build enterprise solutions, payment systems, CRM platforms, that kind of stuff. Not the sexiest work in the world, but it paid enough for me to buy a decent 2-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood 2 years ago. Bought it before marriage. My company might not have the name recognition of Google or Apple, but we're solid. $90K base with annual bonuses that usually hit around $15 to $20K. Health benefits that actually cover things. 401K matching. The kind of stability most women my age are still dreaming about. My boss, Chester, 42, male, took me under his wing when I first started. He's this old school coder who transitioned to management but still keeps his hands dirty with code. He didn't just teach me coding best practices, he showed me how to navigate company politics, how to negotiate my salary, got me an extra $12,000 on my last promotion, and how to manage client expectations without promising the impossible. Then my husband, now ex, make, 27 male, walked into my life at a friend's house party 3 years back. He was this charming guy who worked in real estate. Confident, funny, and easy on the eyes. We had this instant chemistry that everyone noticed, one of those connections that feels like you've known someone for years. What first caught my attention was how passionate he was when talking about his work. He could explain market trends and investment strategies in a way that made them sound exciting. Smart, ambitious, and invested in his career. Exactly what I was looking for. We dated for a year before he proposed. I cried, said yes, and we had a small wedding at his parents' church. Just 50 or so people, close friends and family. I spent 2 months' salary on the ring, 2.1 carat diamond with a platinum band. For context, my younger sister, Ellie, 24, has always been the golden child. 4 years younger, but somehow always the center of attention. Prettier, better with people, better at charming our mom into getting whatever she wanted. She was a cheerleader in high school. I was the chess club girl who built websites in my free time. Classic mama's girl situation. I was the quiet, responsible one who worked hard but never quite measured up in mom's eyes. Dad was always fair with both of us, but Ellie was definitely mom's favorite. That dynamic never changed. The contrast between us was almost comical at family gatherings. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, Ellie showed up 2 hours late. No side dish like she promised, but with some guy she'd met the night before. Instead of being annoyed, Mom fussed over both of them, while I had been there since morning helping prep the turkey. Dad just shook his head and poured me an extra glass of water when Mom wasn't looking. Dad's a retired mechanical engineer. Logical, methodical, plays by the rules. He taught me how to change the oil in my first car, how to fix a leaky faucet, all that practical dad stuff. He never understood my coding work, but respected that I'd found a solid career. Mom's a former elementary school teacher who retired early when Dad's engineering firm took off. She always had a soft spot for Ellie, who she called her sensitive artistic soul. After college, I went straight into coding, while Ellie bounced around between jobs. She'd work somewhere for a few months, get bored, then quit. Always had some story about toxic management. Meanwhile, her credit card bills somehow became Mom and Dad's problem. Twice I bailed her out of minor legal trouble. Once for driving with an expired license, and once for trespassing at an ex-boyfriend's apartment. Cost me nearly $3,000, which she promised to pay back as soon as things turned around. Eventually, I helped her get a position at my company in the sales department. Chester, my boss, was hesitant. He'd met Ellie at our company Christmas party the year before and wasn't impressed, but I vouched for her, said I'd keep her in line. Ellie had the charm for it, and I figured having her there would give her some stability. Plus, family looks out for family, right? The sales job at our company came with a $65,000 base plus commission. Not bad for someone with Ellie's spotty resume. I spent 3 weekends coaching her on our products, the industry terminology. Told her this was her chance to build something real. She seemed grateful, said all the right things. Chester gave me one of those, "I hope you know what you're doing" looks when I introduced them. Make, and I settled into married life pretty well. Our relationship wasn't Hollywood movie material, but it was solid. We talked about starting a family, maybe in a year or two. I spent weekends working on the house, installed a new kitchen island, built a deck in the backyard, all that homeowner stuff. Make decorated the place, making it look like something out of those home design magazines. I put about $20,000 into home improvements over that first year. New hardwood flooring in the living room, upgraded the master bathroom with a rainfall shower and heated floors, landscaped the backyard. Every penny I put in was raising the property value, plus giving us a place we both loved. The first year was good. We had our routines. Sunday morning pancakes, Wednesday date nights, the occasional weekend trip to his parents' lake house. We hosted game nights with friends, took a cooking class together, all that couple stuff you're supposed to do. We seemed happy. About a year in, I got assigned to a major project at work, rebuilding the payment system for a big hospital chain. The irony isn't lost on me now. I was working longer hours, often coming home after Make was asleep. Weekend work became normal. The project was supposed to last 3 months, but stretched to 6. I started missing those Sunday pancakes, those Wednesday date nights. The project was a career maker. Successfully implementing a new payment system for a $2 billion company would put me on the fast track for a senior architect position. Bigger salary, stock options, more control over which projects I worked on. I explained all this to Make, and he seemed to understand. He even brought me dinner at the office a few times during those first weeks of overtime. During this time, Make made a new friend at work, Alexis. This travel nurse from Seattle was doing a 6-month rotation at our hospital. Alexis was everything Make wasn't. Single, carefree, kind of wild. Suddenly, Make was going out for guys' nights with Alexis's group and coming home with stories about clubs I didn't even know existed in our city. I was too busy with my project to really notice how much things were changing. Things started feeling weird about 4 months before everything imploded, right around when my big project was wrapping up. The system was finally launched, and I was looking forward to getting back to normal life with Make. But somewhere along the way, normal had shifted. Make's schedule got unpredictable. He'd always been consistent with his appointments and showing properties, but suddenly he was staying late for clients and grabbing last-minute drinks with coworkers. When I asked, he'd say the market was hot and he needed to hustle. I checked our bank statements one night and noticed he'd been withdrawing $200 to $300 in cash every week for the past 2 months. When I asked casually, he said something vague about preferring cash for happy hours and tipping. Made sense on the surface, but it was new behavior. I tried to reconnect, suggested we take a weekend trip to celebrate my project being done. He said he couldn't get the time off. I offered to cook his favorite dinner. He texted last minute saying Alexis needed help moving apartments. A rational person might have connected these dots sooner, but I was still operating on trust. 6 years of building enterprise systems had trained me to look for multiple data points before declaring a bug. I needed more evidence. Then there was the phone stuff. He'd be texting constantly with this little smile on his face. But the second I walked into the room, phone flipped over. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say just Alexis or their group chat. After I got Ellie the sales job at my company, she started coming to office happy hours more. Make would show up too, saying he wanted to support both of us. There was this one night at Barley's where I got stuck talking to a client who showed up unexpectedly. I was across the room for maybe 45 minutes. When I finally broke free, I found Make and Ellie in this deep conversation in a corner booth, heads almost touching. They jumped a little when I walked up. Ellie immediately launched into a story about a potential lead at one of the hospital campuses, how they were discussing a deal with the procurement department. Made sense on the surface. What didn't make sense was how Make's hand lingered on Ellie's arm a beat too long, or how Ellie's cheeks were flushed, in that way I recognized from our early dating days. But again, my own sister, my own husband, I filed it away as an anomaly, not a pattern. Ellie started showing up at our place unannounced too. She'd bring Make these little gifts. His favorite iced coffee from that specialty shop downtown, fancy cufflinks, even scented candles he liked. When I thanked her for being thoughtful, she'd say something like, "Just looking out for my brother-in-law." I actually thought it was nice at the time, freaking clueless. At work, Ellie was actually doing well in sales, hit 115% of her quota 3 months in a row, started dressing better, seemed more focused. I was secretly proud that my helping her had paid off. Coworkers would congratulate me on straightening Ellie out, and I'd feel this misplaced sense of sisterly accomplishment. Then, about 2 months after, Make started getting sick in the mornings. I'd hear him in the bathroom at 6 a.m., the shower running to mask the sounds. One morning, I got up to check on him, held his back while he retched over the sink. I suggested maybe he was coming down with something, and he freaked out, like genuinely panicked. Said it was just a stomach bug going around the office. He immediately scheduled a doctor's appointment, but didn't want me to go with him. Said it was nothing to worry about. Here's the thing, Make wasn't sick, Ellie was. I'd been tracking my own cycle on my calendar. We were supposedly trying for a baby after all. I was right on time every month. He'd never seemed interested in the details, but I thought maybe he was just being chill. When I noticed Ellie was acting differently, tired, moody, dodging social invites, it clicked, but I still didn't want to believe it. My friend Kevin, who works in hospital administration, not at Make's hospital, met me for drinks around this time. He asked how things were going, and I mentioned the weird behavior at home. "Morning sickness?" he said with a wink. I told him I wasn't pregnant, and he got this weird look on his face. "You and Make still trying?" When I said yes, he just nodded and changed the subject. Later that night, he texted me. "Hey, not trying to cause drama, but how's Ellie doing at your company?" I replied that she was doing fine, hitting her sales targets. Kevin never explained why he asked. Around this time, Mom started acting weird too. She'd call Make directly instead of calling our home line like usual. When I'd be around during those calls, Make would say things like, "Yes, I got that recipe," or "I'll check that sale," but the conversations seemed longer than they needed to be. Once I walked in while they were on speaker, and Mom quickly said, "Oh, Valerie's home. We'll talk later." Mom had always liked Make, but suddenly they had this new closeness. They'd go shopping together. Had inside jokes I wasn't part of. Mom even gave Make a family heirloom watch that had been promised to my future husband since I was a kid. When I mentioned being surprised by this, Mom said, "Well, he is your husband now, isn't he?" Something in her tone felt off. Everything fell apart on a Thursday in April. I was working from home while Make had a showing scheduled across town. I'd made plans to surprise him with his favorite takeout for dinner when he got home, hoping to reconnect after weeks of feeling distance between us. Around lunchtime, I got an email notification that a furniture delivery I'd been waiting on was scheduled for tomorrow. I needed to confirm the time slot, but couldn't find the original confirmation in my inbox to reply to. We shared a desktop computer in our home office that we both used, Make for his real estate spreadsheets and me for personal projects. I was logged into my email account, but remembered Make sometimes organized my inbox when using the computer. He was big on inbox zero while I let emails pile up. I figured maybe he'd seen it and moved it to a folder. So I logged into his email to see if he'd forwarded it there. That's when I saw an email thread between him and my mom with the subject line, "Don't let Valerie find out." My stomach dropped. I sat there staring at that subject line for what felt like forever. There was a voice in my head saying, "Close the browser, respect his privacy." But a louder voice said, "What the hell is this about?" I clicked it, and what I read next shattered me. Emails going back 3 months between Make and my mom discussing how to hide his affair with Ellie. The earliest ones were vague. Mom asking if he was sure about this path, warning him to be more careful around me. But they quickly became explicit. Mom was giving him advice on how to cover it up, when to claim property showings, what excuses to use, even offering her house as a meeting place when Dad was out golfing. "Frank always plays 18 holes on Thursdays, so you have at least 4 hours," one email read. She'd created a detailed schedule of when Dad would be out of the house, so Make and Ellie could sneak around. My own mother, plotting behind my back. Then the bomb. The latest emails were about the pregnancy. Ellie was 2 months along, confirmed by her doctor, and they weren't sure if the baby was Make's or someone else's, but based on the timing, it could very well be his. There was an email where Make panicked after I asked if he was feeling sick. My own mother had written, "Just say it's stress or a bug. Valerie's got enough going on. Don't worry, she'll believe you." Mom was actually telling Make to pass off the pregnancy, if I ever found out, as a fluke. Or better yet, pretend it had nothing to do with him. The entire thread read like a conspiracy novel. There were timestamp-specific alibis, contingency plans, even a shared calendar where they tracked my project deadlines and work schedule to plan their meetups. What got me wasn't just the betrayal. It was the coordination. The calculation. The three people who were supposed to love me most, working together to deceive me. I felt physically sick. I sat at that computer for what must have been hours reading. Every email was more devastating than the last. I kept hoping to find something, anything, that would tell me this was all a misunderstanding. A sick joke, something other than what it clearly was. But it wasn't. It was real. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a flash drive, printed out the most incriminating ones and put them in a folder. Then I called Chester. I couldn't think straight. I needed someone level-headed. "You need a lawyer," he said immediately. "Don't confront them yet." Chester knew a good attorney. His second divorce had been messy. He made the call from my living room, put it on speaker. Sarah Jacobson, divorce attorney. Since we lived in a fault state and I had clear evidence of infidelity, Sarah said I was in a strong position. The fact that I had bought the house before marriage meant it wouldn't be considered marital property. Same with most of my investments and savings. She advised me to secure my finances immediately. So, Chester drove me to the bank. I moved most of our joint funds into a separate account, leaving just enough to avoid claims of financial abandonment. I left exactly $5,000 in the joint account, enough to show I wasn't trying to strand him, but not enough to fund a new life with my sister. The rest, about $38,000, went into an individual account under my name. I called my investment firm and verified that my premarital assets, about $115,000 in various funds, were properly documented as separate property. By the time Make came home that night, I had already set things in motion. Sarah was drafting divorce papers. Chester had helped me regain some composure. I didn't confront Make that night. I was still in shock. I needed to think strategically. "How was the showing?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Exhausting," he said, launching into a story about a couple who kept changing their minds. I watched him lie to my face, thinking about the emails where he described meeting Ellie at Mom's house that very day. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal while my entire life was imploding. He asked why Chester's car had been in the driveway earlier. Apparently the neighbors had mentioned it. I said we were discussing a work project. Another lie to add to the pile. Over the next few days, I acted normal while setting everything in motion. I went to work, made small talk with Make in the evenings, even watched our usual Thursday night show together, all while dying inside. I gathered all my important documents and moved them to a safety deposit box. Froze our joint credit cards. I even installed small cameras in our common areas, totally legal since it was my house. Chester helped me set them up while Make was working late. Just in case they try to take or destroy anything, he advised. Kevin from hospital administration texted to check in. Turns out he'd seen Make and Ellie together at a restaurant weeks ago, looking far too intimate for in-laws. He'd been trying to find a way to tell me. I thanked him for trying, told him I figured it out on my own. My plan started forming on Sunday night. Make was in the shower when a text notification popped up on his iPad on the coffee table. It was from Ellie. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow at Mom's." The betrayal was happening every single day right under my nose. That's when I decided on the dinner plan. I called my dad Monday morning and asked if we could host a family dinner at our place that weekend. Told him I had some good news to share. "Are you sure you want to host? Your mom and I can do it," he offered. "No, I insist," I said, thinking about how perfect it would be to confront them all on my own territory. I invited Ellie and my parents, told Make to expect a special dinner. He seemed nervous but agreed. I could see the tension in his shoulders when I mentioned Ellie was coming. He texted constantly that day, probably coordinating stories with her and Mom. In the days leading up to the dinner, I met with Sarah twice more. She had drafts of the divorce filing ready. Sarah called Thursday with an update. The divorce papers would be ready Friday morning. I picked them up during my lunch break. The manila envelope burned a hole in my backpack all afternoon. The day of the dinner, I took the afternoon off work to prepare everything. Food ordered from this nice Italian place downtown. No way I was cooking. Divorce papers in a manila envelope, a folder of emails in a larger envelope from my dad. The camera in the dining room was recording, just in case things got out of hand and I needed proof later. And I had another surprise ready too. I'd cashed out some stock options and had a cashier's check for $10,000 made out to my dad, the exact amount I knew he and Mom had recently loaned Ellie to pay off her credit cards. I figured he should get his money back before the family imploded. My parents arrived first at 6:30 p.m. Mom gave me this weird, tight hug and immediately asked where Make was. "He's upstairs getting ready," I said, my voice calm. Ellie showed up last at 6:45. She had this smug smile that made me want to throw the whole dinner plate at her face. She gave me one of those fake sister hugs, barely brushing my shoulder. Make came downstairs wearing the blue dress shirt I'd bought him for our anniversary. We all sat down for dinner. I kept it together. Small talk about work, the weather, Dad's golf game. Mom kept glancing nervously between Make and Ellie. Ellie barely touched her food, just pushed it around her plate. After the main course, Dad raised his glass. "So, what's this good news you wanted to share with us?" I smiled, reached under the table, pulled out the manila envelope. "Actually, I do have something to share," I said, sliding the envelope across the table to Make. "These are divorce papers." The room went dead silent. Make's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" he whispered, not opening the envelope. "I know everything, Make, about you and Ellie, about the baby that might be yours, about Mom helping you hide it all." I kept my voice level, though I was shaking inside. Mom gasped dramatically. "How dare you accuse them of such a thing? Make would never—" I cut her off by pulling out the second envelope and handing it to my dad. "These are emails between Mom and Make discussing the affair, and how to hide it from me. It's been going on for at least 3 months." Dad's hands shook as he started reading. The color drained from his face. Ellie stood up suddenly, knocking over her chair. "You had no right to go through his emails," she shouted, as if that were the crime here. "I think I had every right to know my husband is sleeping with my sister and might have gotten her pregnant," I said coldly. "How long were you planning to hide it, Make? Were you just going to pass the baby off as mine?" Ellie burst into tears. "It's not what you think," she sobbed. "It was a mistake. Just one mistake. A 3-month mistake? With my sister? While my mother covered for you?" I laughed. No humor in it, just exhaustion and pain. "And now you're pregnant." Mom tried to reach for the papers Dad was holding, but he pulled them away from her. "Catherine, what is this?" he asked, voice dangerously quiet. "Did you help them hide this from Valerie?" Mom's face had gone from fake shock to panic. "Make told me it wasn't serious. He said it was just emotional confusion, and that he didn't want to hurt Valerie. I was just trying to help." Dad looked up, stone-faced. "Catherine, did you know? Did you help them lie to our daughter?" Mom started crying, trying to play the victim. "I was just trying to protect the family. Ellie made a mistake, but tearing everything apart won't help anyone." Make, the smug piece of crap, actually scoffed. "Come on, it's not that big a deal. Ellie and I connected. It happens. Valerie's always working anyway, barely pays attention to what's going on at home." Something inside me snapped. I stood up, walked around the table, and slapped him so hard his chair tipped back and he caught himself on the floor. Mom screamed. Dad stood then, angrier than I'd ever seen him. "Enough, Catherine. Our daughter just found out her husband and sister betrayed her in the worst way, and you're worried about his cheek?" He pointed at Ellie. "Get out of this house, now." Make, rubbing his face, stood slowly. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll regret this." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'll heal from this. You'll be stuck with it." Ellie ran for the door. Make followed. Mom tried to go after them, but Dad grabbed her wrist. "You stay. We need to talk." Ellie was still crying at the table. "Valerie, please, I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. We didn't plan this." I stared at her, ice cold. "I want a paternity test. If you're keeping this baby, I need to know if it's his. And either way, we're done. The 3 of you are out of my life." I handed the cashier's check to my dad. "This is to pay back what Ellie borrowed from you and Mom. Figured you should get your money back before everything burns to the ground." Dad looked at the check, then at me with heavy eyes. "Valerie, I had no idea this was happening. I'm so sorry." Mom was still sniffling, saying she thought it would all blow over, that Ellie had always been impulsive, that she didn't think it would go this far. Dad wasn't having it. He told her to get her coat. They were leaving. After my parents left, Make and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, he spoke. "What happens now?" "Now?" I said calmly. "Now you pack a bag and leave. The house is mine. It's not community property. You've got until tomorrow to figure out where you're going, but it won't be here. He nodded slowly, went upstairs to pack. I sat at the dining table, surrounded by the wreckage of what I thought was my life, feeling strangely calm. The worst had happened, and I had survived it. Everything from here on out would be rebuilding. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings and paperwork. Make moved out to stay with a friend. Not with Ellie, interestingly enough. I changed the locks the day after the dinner. I wasn't taking any chances. The paternity test was scheduled once it was safe to perform one. Ellie agreed without a fight. I think some part of her was hoping the baby was Make's, thinking that might change things, that it would somehow bind us all back together. 2 weeks after the dinner, I got served with a misdemeanor assault charge, courtesy of Make, who had the nerve to report the slap to the police. My lawyer, Sarah, wasn't overly concerned. First offense, no weapon, and a situation with clear emotional provocation. Not a legal defense per se, but potentially relevant for sentencing. She made it clear the court wouldn't ignore the assault, but context could work in my favor. 3 months later, we had our hearing. Make showed up with his arm around Mom, playing the victim like a pro. I came with Sarah and 2 character witnesses from work, including Chester, who spoke to my history of professionalism and restraint. The judge reviewed the incident, heard testimony about the circumstances leading up to it, and accepted some contextual evidence regarding the affair, not as justification, but as background. In the end, the court found me guilty of simple assault and imposed a $500 fine, noting that it was an isolated act in response to a deeply personal betrayal. The judge didn't mince words, said I had let emotions override better judgment, but also implied that Make was fortunate things hadn't escalated further. Mom looked mortified. Make glared like he expected applause. I considered it $500 well spent. Dad called me the day the charges were filed. He was furious, not at me, but at Make. He told me he had already taken steps to remove Make from his will entirely. When Mom found out, she apparently had a meltdown, threatened to leave Dad if he went through with it. I told her she was welcome to leave, but she should know. I'd make sure she got nothing if she chose Make and Ellie over the family. Dad said that shut her up pretty quick. My dad's finances are no joke. 30 years at his engineering firm, smart investments, real estate holdings. No wonder Mom freaked out when Dad threatened to cut Make out. Her true colors showed through this whole thing. She'd raised Ellie to think she could do no wrong, and now she was facing the consequences of creating such an entitled mess. Dad said she was still moping around the house, crying about how her family was falling apart, but at least she'd stopped defending Ellie and Make, at least in public. A week after the dinner, Dad came by the house. He brought his tools and helped me repaint the living room and master bedroom, erasing every hint of Make's design choices. We didn't talk much while we worked, but when we finished, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're handling this better than I would have at your age. I'm proud of you." That meant more than he knew. I went back to work after a week off. Chester had told the team I was dealing with family issues and needed some space. When I returned, he'd moved my desk to a different floor, far from Ellie's department. Smart move. Later, I found out Chester had also put Ellie on a performance improvement plan, citing ethical concerns in her file. Technically, sleeping with your sister's husband isn't a fireable offense, but Chester found ways to make her work life difficult without crossing any HR lines. Ellie didn't last long after that. Ellie's strict religious parents found out about everything from my dad, who felt they deserved to know what their daughter had done. They were devastated. Her father called me personally to apologize, saying they had raised her better than this. They told Ellie she wasn't welcome in their home until she found her way back to God. Pretty harsh, but I couldn't blame them. Make and Ellie eventually ended up renting an apartment together, though from what I heard, they were far from happy. Mom was their only visitor, sneaking over when she thought Dad wouldn't notice. I cut all 3 of them out of my life completely. Changed my number, blocked their emails. The works. Dad was the only family member I still talked to. The paternity test came back. The baby wasn't Make's. In a way, it was a relief, a clean break, no biological ties to maintain. The divorce proceedings went smoothly after that, with the infidelity proven and the paternity test confirming it wasn't my husband's child. Since we lived in a fault state, Make got almost nothing. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and most of our assets. He didn't even fight it. I think he knew he had no grounds to. Our friends mostly took my side, especially once they heard the full story. A few tried to stay neutral, saying, "There are two sides to every story," but they faded away quickly. My real friends stepped up. They invited me over for dinner, checked in regularly, didn't let me isolate myself. I threw myself into work, took on a new project rebuilding a major insurance company's claims processing system. The 70-hour weeks kept my mind off everything. Chester started grooming me for a technical director position, faster advancement than I'd expected, but I was ready for it. I also joined a gym, hired a trainer who kicked my ass 3 times a week, lost the 15 pounds I'd gained during my marriage, put on some muscle, started running again, did a half marathon 6 months after the divorce. Dating was the last thing on my mind for a long time. Friends tried to set me up, but I wasn't ready. Trust issues don't disappear overnight. 6 months after everything went down, I was in a good place. The divorce was finalized. The assault charge had been settled with a fine. I'd been promoted at work. The house finally felt like mine again after I renovated and got rid of everything that reminded me of Make. I gutted the master bathroom, new tile, new fixtures, new everything. Converted the guest bedroom into a home gym, built a custom entertainment center in the living room. The house became a project that kept my hands busy and my mind focused. By the time I was done, it looked nothing like the place where Make and I had lived together. My finances were looking better than ever. The promotion came with a $20,000 salary bump, plus stock options. I maxed out my 401k, started a separate investment account, and even began looking at rental properties as potential income sources. At 28, I was in a better financial position than most women my age, especially without a husband draining my resources. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from Mom asking to meet at a diner downtown. Said it was important. Said she needed to talk to me in person. I agreed to meet her during my lunch break, making it clear I only had 30 minutes. When I arrived at the diner, I immediately regretted it. Mom wasn't alone. Ellie was sitting next to her, looking exhausted, with a baby carrier on the booth seat. I almost turned and walked out, but Mom spotted me and waved frantically. I went over and sat down across from them, not bothering with greetings. "What is this?" I asked flatly, looking directly at Mom. She had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she admitted, "but I needed to talk to you. Ellie, she's in trouble. Make's been arrested." That got my attention. Arrested for what? He was caught embezzling money from his brokerage firm. And he also got a DUI last week, Mom said, her voice cracking. "He's facing serious jail time. We need your help to bail him out." I just stared at her. "You want me to bail out the man who cheated on me with my sister, got her pregnant, and then pressed assault charges against me?" I asked slowly. "Are you insane?" Looking closer, I noticed Mom's designer handbag was scraped and worn. Her manicure chipped. Dad must have cut off her spending. Good for him. Ellie spoke up then, her voice barely a whisper. "Make left us right after Lily was born," she said, nodding toward the baby. "He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He was drinking a lot. Sometimes he'd get angry. He pushed me around." I felt nothing. Not satisfaction that their relationship had imploded. Not pity. Just nothing. "He hit her, Valerie," Mom added, as if that would suddenly flip a switch in me. "And now she's alone. With a baby. No job. No support." I looked at Ellie. "And what do you want from me?" She started crying. "I don't know what to do. My parents won't talk to me. I can't work with a newborn. Make drained our bank account before he got arrested. I thought maybe you could help, just until I get back on my feet." I sat back in the booth, studying the 2 women who had betrayed me, now begging for help because the man they'd chosen over me turned out to be exactly the kind of person I always knew he was. Mom nodded earnestly. "Family helps family, Valerie." I almost laughed. "Where was that family loyalty when you were helping them hide their affair from me?" I asked. "When you convinced Ellie to try and pass off this baby as mine? When you offered up your house as their private love nest?" "I made a mistake," Mom said, tears welling. "I thought I was protecting everyone." "No," I cut her off. "You were protecting your favorite, and now you're still doing it, even after everything he's done." Mom leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Your father is being unreasonable. He's frozen all our accounts. I can't access any money without his approval. He's talking about divorce if I don't cut ties with Make completely." "Sounds reasonable to me," I said. "Dad's finally standing up for himself." I stood up and pulled out my wallet, took out a card and placed it on the table. "This place can help you," I told Ellie. "It's a women's shelter. They have resources, support groups, childcare, job counseling." "I won't," I added, looking at both of them. "As for Make, he can rot in jail for all I care." Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off again. Don't contact me again. Tell Dad I miss him, and he's welcome to call me anytime. And with that, I walked out of the diner. Didn't look back. In my car, I sat for a moment expecting to feel something. Anger, vindication, pity. But no, I felt nothing. They weren't my problem anymore. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes they left behind, and I was doing just fine without them. That night, Dad called me. He'd figured out where Mom had gone and why. He apologized for her behavior and assured me he had no intention of helping Make either. We talked for almost an hour about work, about the house, about the new woman I'd started seeing. Normal father-daughter stuff. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Make had taken a plea deal. 18 months for embezzlement. Ellie had moved back to her hometown, apparently reconciled with her parents just enough that they were helping with the baby. As for me, the promotion at work turned into a full director position, overseeing a team of 15 developers. I bought a rental property that's already generating positive cash flow. I'm planning a 2-week hiking trip through Yellowstone next summer, something I've always wanted to do but never made time for. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine now, and it's peaceful. I know now that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. Some days that's enough.